evening. I am your host, Josh Peck. Tonight, we welcome back to the show Doc Marquis, who has just released a DVD about the Rapture, which will be the topic of tonight's show. Doc Marquis was raised in an Illuminati family for 20 years and was a seventh-generation witch before coming to know Jesus Christ. Since that time, he has been speaking out against the deceptions promulgated throughout our world today by such groups as the Illuminati, as well as others. He has been on more than 1,000 radio shows, including The Sharpening, when he came on the first time to talk about the dictators of the Illuminati. If you're interested in checking out that episode, you can do so at youtube.com/Josh Peck Disclosure, and the episode is 020 through 021, Doc Marquis and Dictators of the Illuminati. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the show, friend of the show, Doc Marquis. Doc, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, Josh. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I'm really excited about this show. You know, I remember when I first started this show, I said something along the lines of, in one of the episodes, I don't remember which one, I don't know if I'll ever do a Rapture episode because it's so controversial, and I'm not afraid, I'm not personally afraid of controversy. The Sharpening is steeped in it with any topic that we cover anyway. But if there is one topic within the church that seems to bring out a lot of animosity and division, it's the Rapture. But since that show, that was when I first started. I started coming out a little bit more and talking a little bit more about how I am a pre-tribulation Rapture believer, but I also think that it's a topic that should be handled with, respect and, respect towards others, and there's no need to fight and branch off into, all these denominations and stuff over it. And the last time that you came on after the show, we actually got into a pretty interesting discussion about the Rapture because you had written a blog about it, which I read and absolutely loved. There was a lot of stuff you brought out in there that are really great evidence for the pre-trib rapture belief, and that help answer a lot of questions that people of other rapture beliefs have. So we talked about doing a rapture episode, and I'm actually just scheduling and everything. We didn't get it worked out until now, but I'm glad that it happened that way because you have a DVD on it now. So that's awesome.
Well, yeah, you see, I've been planning on doing a DVD on the Rapture because so many people on the website and on my Facebook page have asked me about something like this. And, well, you see, on my Facebook alone, and mind you, just this week, someone was about to bring up the Rapture issue for the third time. The last two times that the issue was brought up on Facebook, and as you pointed out, people are very passionate about this, but unfortunately, they get ugly about it.
Yeah.
And so those first two times, I put my foot down. I said, now you can stop the conversation.
Yeah.
I am not expecting my brothers and sisters to behave like anything other than Christians, and they were not behaving like Christians once they, let their passion overrule their common sense. So someone was going to try to bring it up again, and boy, were they getting ugly and mean, and it got to the point where I finally had to have the person deleted and blocked.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's how bad it gets. And for the sake of we have, I think I've reached my limit, 5,000 limit on Facebook.
Right.
For the sake of the other 4,999 people, I'm not going to tolerate that type of misbehavior. I don't expect Christians to behave like that. Get passionate. Fine, that's good. But don't get mean, don't get ugly about it. And this one person in particular was setting himself up as the final authority, and anyone who disagreed with him was an idiot.
Oh yeah, I can't stand that attitude, and yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I've had to remove some people for things like that as well. It just reaches a point where if somebody's going to be insulting and just not acting out of love like we're supposed to. I've always said on this show, it's okay to have disagreements, and it's okay to have different interpretations as long as they still line up with Scripture and the Gospel and everything. But we're not told everything. It's okay to have different views, but for one thing, you better be able to support it with Scripture, but also you treat it with love and humility, and realize other people might not see it the same way. That doesn't make them necessarily wrong. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But even if they are, it still doesn't give us the right to get all puffed up and full of hubris and kind of try to make a mockery out of them for their beliefs. And I've seen a lot of that from. And I don't want to throw everybody into a group, because honestly, some of the best friends that I have are not pre-trib. They're pre-wrath or post-trib or mid-trib. All these different things. Some of them are, a lot of them are really kind and really really generous. But it seems like there's just so much vitriol and animosity with this whole Rapture issue. So I gotta ask, what made you interested in even touching this topic, let alone producing a DVD about it?
Well, you see, as I said before, I was going to do something like this mainly because I had been asked to clarify this situation once and for all for so many people on my Facebook page. Now, last year when I was doing a prophecy summit in Orlando, Florida, under the auspices of Prophecy in the News, which, by the way, they're holding another prophecy summit this year in Orlando, Florida, at the end of February, and I think it spills into March for a day or two. And they're going to also have another one. As a matter of fact, now that I think of it, I believe it's in August in Colorado Springs, Colorado. So I would recommend everyone right now go to Prophecy in the News. Try to get to these prophecy summits if you can, because I'll tell you right now, tickets are flying and there's no guarantee anyone's going to make it.
Oh yeah,
so,
and they put on some of the best prophecy conferences you'll ever see.
The speaker list this year is the biggest I've ever seen.
Wow.
I haven't seen anything this big. It looks like there's going to be 30-some-odd speakers who are considered experts in their fields, and this is a rare opportunity where people can actually, speak to these people one-on-one, ask them maybe something about in a book or a DVD, and I'll tell you that's this, most of those speakers I know, and I can tell you right now, they bless their hearts. They take out the time to just, talk with these people. What do you want to know? What's your question? And all this. And this is, something that, for my part, has been needed for so long, And when you go there, the best thing is you're among, I hate to put it to you like this, but you're among your own people.
Yeah.
You're with your own brothers and sisters in the Lord, and it is such a wonderful, user-friendly atmosphere, and the excitement and, the energy that's generated, and, you could just feel the presence of God in so much of this. So I would encourage everyone, go to Prophecy in the News website and, join us at these summits. As a matter of fact, I just remembered, Joshua, I've got a lot of people, I hate to say this, that want to come up and see me, and I've been contacted by a lot of pastors that want to speak with me. They haven't told me about what they want to speak to me yet, so I'm praying to myself, oh, Father, please, don't let me be busted like, I used to be busted at my Christian university. Because you get one of those panic attacks. I still have them. Oh, my goodness, what did I do this time? But people, you see, the reason I did this DVD, well, as I said, the people have asked me to clarify this situation. And the reason I brought up Orlando, Florida, last year, see, a lot of times what I will do is test drive through a presentation on the makings of a new DVD. And when I was finished with the presentation, well, first of all, you could have heard a pin drop throughout the entire presentation. Second of all, I couldn't believe it, but I got a standing ovation at the end. And then after that, I can't even remember literally how many hundreds, and I mean hundreds, of people walked up to me, including quite a number of pastors, who told me they've never seen anything like this ever before.
Wow.
And so, quite honestly, I was gobsmacked. I'm thinking to myself, wait a second, the rapture is Bible 101.
Yeah.
What am I not understanding here? And so it seems, and let's say it for what it is, it seems that even for all the failings of the church, especially in, holding still to the Bible nowadays, possibly, and I'm not saying this is the truth, I can only make a guess, going by what I had personally witnessed at the last prophecy summit, it's possible that maybe even the rapture isn't being addressed anymore.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people, it's one of two extremes. That's kind of what I've noticed. Either they're really, really passionate about it to the point that they kind of alienate everybody, or they just kind of dismiss it as like, well, it's too controversial, we don't want to talk about that, we want to fill seats in the church and stuff like that, so we'll just set that to the side. But neither of those extremes is really all that great.
Well, you see, they don't have to be extreme, they don't have to be mean, they don't have to be ugly. If we follow what God tells us, let us sit and reason.
Exactly.
Reason these things out. In other words, let's not sit down and let our emotions fly off in all directions. Let's use our minds. Let's reason this through. Now, we can sit down and have a friendly discourse about any perspective. And like yourself, a lot of my colleagues, a lot of my brothers and sisters and friends, they hold to the mid or to the post or to the pre-trib, okay? And like yourself, I come from the pre-trib school, and I can, show why it has to be, because, and I must emphasize, folks, this is not my idea. When I look at, some of the material in this new DVD, folks, this really wasn't my idea. Some people think I'm good, but I'm looking at this, I'm saying, wait a second, this is too good. This is God.
Yeah.
And I see how he's done things throughout history and everything that we just weren't watching for. And let me, because you and I had this discussion before, let me ask you one question. And let me preface this first. The reason people are making mistakes when it comes to is it pre, mid, or post is because they don't even know what a rapture is.
Okay.
Let me ask you this. Tell me, what's a rapture?
Well, to my current understanding, it's a type of catching away or being snatched up. I don't have the exact Greek definition in front of me, but
the Greek word is hapezo.
Ah, thank you. Yes, and so I kind of look at it like that, and that there will be the typical pre-trib view that there will be a time in our future where we'll be taken up to heaven, and sometime after that the whole 7-year thing will start. So that's kind of my current idea on how that all works out. Let me ask you then, what is a rapture?
Well, I was going to tell you. First of all, you're right, but you're absolutely wrong. You see, you did not answer the question. You see, I asked you what is a rapture. You told me what's going to happen in the next rapture.
Oh, okay.
And surprising for most people, there's been more than one rapture. We've had more than one rapture happen, but because people don't know what makes a rapture, They get it all mixed up. Now, right now, I'm betting you're sitting on a chair or something like that, right?
Yes.
Now, the reason I can identify it as a chair is because it has certain components about it. It has usually 4 legs, a seat, and a backrest, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I have clearly identified those components, those elements that make a chair a chair. I cannot confuse a chair with a television, can I?
Right.
Okay, well, this is what I'm talking about. People don't know those elements that make up a Rapture, and because of that, they get it all mixed up. And this
okay.
is what we're going to look at. There's only, and let me tell you this. The apostles themselves, they were the only ones, the only people on the earth who ever had the divine authority to make a doctrine into a doctrine.
Very true.
And because the Rapture was so simple, so straightforward, they didn't bother to turn it into a doctrine. It is not a recognized doctrine in the Bible. Some people have usurped the authority and have turned it into a doctrine, but that's not biblical. It was never declared to be any sort of doctrine in the Bible because it was so simple, so straightforward, so easy to understand. There were only 3 things, and only 3 things that make a rapture, and you're going to love this. First of all, God physically removes those whom he declares to be righteous outside of his impending judgment.
Okay.
And that's it. God physically removes those whom he declares to be righteous outside of his impending judgment. Now, knowing that this, and it's simple, it's straightforward, very easy, very straight to the point. God physically removes those whom he declares to be righteous outside of his impending judgment. Now, knowing these are the 3 components that make up a rapture, can we prove it's true? And the only way you can prove if it's true or not is by using the scientific method. The scientific method declares that if under the same conditions, the same results happen, then that has to be a fact. You know that as well as I do, Joshua.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. It's known as the scientific method. If under the same conditions, the same results happen, the end result, it is a fact. A fact is a fact. There's no escaping it at that point. Now, using the Bible, comparing what I just declared about the 3 components that make up a rapture, God physically removes those whom he declares to be righteous outside of his impending judgment, put it to the litmus test of the scientific method, we will determine if or not a fact is a fact is a fact here.
Okay.
We're going to answer the question, and we're going to prove it one way or the other. Now, and I will ask my brothers and sisters to set aside your own personal opinions and views, because what I'm going to show you is not my opinion. This is God's opinion. We're going to use God's word. Nothing is going to be taken out of context because I follow the strict principle of hermeneutics. And you know, Joshua, just like I do, hermeneutics declares that the context of every single verse must be held in context. Anything other than that is a lie.
Yes.
So people will be taking their own opinions and saying, well, this is what it says. Excuse me, this is not what the context of the verse is talking about. I've seen this done, and I've seen it done in rampant fashion where I see books and DVDs being made, and they are not adhering to the scriptural practice of hermeneutics. Me, I stick straight to whatever the Bible says.
Absolutely.
And woe be to the person who tries to, get me out of that school. It's not going to happen.
Well, that's good.
Okay, now let's remember the 3 the three elements that make up the rapture. God physically removes those whom he declares to be righteous outside of his impending judgment. And the beauty of this declaration, in the very first book of the Bible, the book of Genesis, is the very first rapture. And this threads itself throughout the Bible, and the last rapture happens in the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelation. So you can find the rapture from the beginning to the end.
Oh, okay.
No small coincidence. But let's take a look at Noah and the great inundation or the flood of Noah, okay? Now, in Revelation, let me ask you something. By what number did Noah bring the animals into the ark?
In twos, and then there's groups of 7 as well.
You know, you're one of the few people who know this. Everyone's telling me it's 2 by 2. Well, actually, that's not what the Bible says. Genesis chapter 7, verse 1, God commanded Noah to bring all the animals into the ark. 2 of the unclean and 7 of the clean.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going by old school math here. I was not taught just the Common Core method. So as far as I know, 2 plus 7 is still 9.
Right.
You know, I'll wait and see what Common Core has to say on that one. But anyways, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't believe it, you know, it's 2 and 7, which equals 9. Check it in Genesis chapter 7, verse 1. Among the other problems, you see, the church is teaching tradition, which is against Colossians 2:8, and not being taught scriptures. That's why we see, you know, people believing, you know, Noah brought the animal in by 2s.
Right.
You know, if we can't even get the basics of this down right, how can we understand the rapture?
Absolutely.
I mean, for goodness sakes, people, we're supposed to be Christians. Don't fall by traditions. Don't listen to what those people are saying. Let's see what God has to say about it.
Absolutely.
Well, anyway, Genesis chapter 6, we find out God tells Noah, you're going to build an ark because it's going to rain and flood the earth. And as far as we know, up to that point, it never rained once.
Right.
So Noah and his family, for the next 100 years, built a ship the size of a modern aircraft carrier. And that's quite a huge vessel.
Yeah.
And mind you, the way it was built, no matter how much the seas were to try to overturn it, it would always right itself. It would always become upright.
Right.
Its design is the measurements of it, the mass of it, is still used in building ships to this very day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the formula is brilliant. But then again, it's God, isn't it? You know, so the one thing we note during the flood, did God take Noah and his family, well, I should say Noah, Mrs. Noah, Ham, Shem, Japheth, and their 3 wives, 8 people total, and put them into the ark?
Well, it says that they, you know, went in and God closed the door. To me, whenever I've read that, it always kind of sounds like God's in there with them.
Well, whether or not he was in them, the question is, did God put them inside of the ark, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, it's an easy question. Let's not try to get theological here. There's no theology here. You know?
See,
it's a yes or no answer.
Yeah, I never know if there's something more to your questions.
If there is, I'll always let you know. You know that.
Good deal.
Okay, so God put them into the ark. Now,
yes.
If you notice in Genesis 6, and I believe it's also in the book of Hebrews, I think chapter 11, God declared that Moses was righteous. Okay, do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, so when we look at the events of the flood, God physically removed Noah and his family because they were declared righteous and put them outside of his judgment. They were kept inside of the ark outside of the destruction of the world. They were completely saved, weren't they?
Yes, absolutely.
It's a simple concept. God physically removes those whom he declares to be righteous outside of his intending judgment. Now, let's go to another one. Let's consider, before we visit vicariously the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah and the other surrounding areas, there was 3 angels that visited Abraham in the wilderness. Remember that event?
Yeah.
Right. And one of them had to have been Jesus Christ.
Absolutely.
Because of the way Abraham referred to him as the Lord. And basically what happens, these 3 beings, 2 angels, and I'm convinced it was Christ himself, visited Abraham, and he welcomed them into his tent, gave them food, water, washed their feet, the whole usual expectation, okay? And before they leave, they explained to Abraham, we're going to go down to that area, Sodom and Gomorrah, we're going to destroy it, wipe it off the face of the earth. Abraham was so shocked by what they declared, and it wasn't what they were going to do that bothered him. It's what they were going to do, and I'll explain. You see, Abraham's argument rested upon righteousness. He was so overwhelmed by what was declared to him, he was actually telling God how to behave like God. He said to the Lord, wait a second, you don't behave like that. God does not do things like that. You're supposed to do it like this. He was actually telling God how to behave like God. And that's when he started into his spiel when he said, if there are 50 righteous people down there, are you not going to spare it for the sake of 50 people? Righteous people, he said. And he says, if I find 50 righteous people there, I won't touch it. Abraham goes on, well, what if there's 45 people, righteous people there? Are you going to touch the place? And the Lord said, for the sake of 45 righteous people, I won't destroy you. And it went on and on and on and on, all the way down to 10. I think maybe to 5 if I recall. But you're going to find out eventually it could have gone down to 1. But the crux of Abraham's argument was righteousness. And this is a major clue. This is one of the biggest clues to understanding a rapture, and most people oversee this. Now let's just put that on the back burner. So after they leave Abraham, the Lord leaves, and the 2 angels go to Sodom, and they speak to Lot, and they tell Lot about what's to happen. And they give him the evening, the rest of the night, to go and find friends or relatives to try to, see if they'll leave also. Well, no one was leaving, and no one was going to follow Lot out, and so he started carrying, hoping, maybe I can get one person. Well, he was delaying and delaying and delaying so long that finally the angels had to grab him and his wife and the kids by the wrist and start dragging him out there. And they gave a major clue. This is our second major clue to look at. They said, and I'm paraphrasing this right now, because you're still here, God can't touch the place. We have to get you out first. So what was there about Lot that was so special that even God couldn't touch the place until he was removed? Well, again, we find out in the New Testament, Lot had been declared to be righteous. Righteousness is coming into this picture for a second time now. But let's go on a little further. So they take him and his family, and they're outside the city. And they tell him, flee to the mountains. The Lord is now about to destroy the place. See, they were outside of the city now. But Abraham countered and said, I can't go by that route. There's, too many evil people waiting to jump, good people. He says, but, and he counted, he says, not too far down the road from here, again, this is paraphrasing, there is a city known as Zoar. I can make it to there without any problems. Now listen to what the angel said here. He said, because you have declared Zoar, because you're going to move there now, it won't be touched.
Wow.
Zoar was obviously on the list of cities to be destroyed, but because righteousness was now going to be living in Zoar, it couldn't be touched. Wherever righteousness exists, God cannot destroy the place.
Wow.
Lot had to be removed by the angel's own declaration. And after, and only after he was out of the city could it be touched. And now Zoar, that was going to be destroyed, is no longer going to be destroyed because Lot is moving in. The argument, excuse me, 3 times comes up. Abraham said, you don't behave like this, Lord. You can't touch righteous people. The evidence that righteousness stops this type of, all-out destruction is evident in Sodom. It couldn't be touched until Lot was first removed. And then, again, righteousness comes in the 3rd time when Zoar is spared because righteousness is now going to move into the place. So this is a key element. God physically removed, and in this case it was Lot and his family, those whom he declared to be righteous outside of his impending judgment.
Wow.
Only after he was secured, and he was secured first. Before God lowered the boom, he was secured. Before God let one droplet hit the ground, Noah and his family were secured outside of God's judgment. And this was before. Notice in these events, and we'll continue, but notice in these events, God removed Lot and he removed Noah before, not during, not after the events, but before he lowered the boom.
Wow.
Next, let's take a look at Moses. Let's use Moses as our next example. Well, Moses, there's a lot. There was so much that was going on with Moses and the 10 plagues. And you know what's really interesting, Josh, is that Moses didn't want to do the job at first.
Right.
Moses, if you notice, was squirming. He was trying to get out of the job by coming up with excuses. And at one point, in my humble opinion, I think he was outrightly lying. You see, Moses was, if you remember the part when he runs into God as a burning bush on the mountain of Ararat. Was it Ararat or was it Sinai? Was it Mount Sinai? I'm getting old. But anyways, the point is, he's talking to God, and he tells him, and this is another excuse at first, and I think he may have been lying. He says, "But God, I have a slow tongue and all this." And wait a second, but over in the book that Dr. Luke wrote, he said Moses was a man of mighty words and a great orator.
Right.
Now, does that sound like a man who's slow in tongue and who can't speak fancy words?
No, it doesn't.
No. Moses was desperately trying to get out of the situation. Now, believe it or not, he had a good reason. He had a very good reason, and I would have done. I know I would have done the same thing. But that's story for another time. Suffice it to say, we're looking at another rapture situation here, and let's apply the three simple components that make a rapture a rapture. God physically removes those whom he declares to be righteous outside of his impending judgment. Now, in Noah's case, well, God secured them and raptured them in an ark, correct?
Correct.
In Lot's case, Lot was raptured and basically moved from one city to another city, correct?
Correct.
Well, let's take a look and see if the three elements fit once again. After Moses meets up with God, and God tells him, you're going to be going with your brother Aaron, but whether you like it or not, Moses, you're going. I love it. At this point, Moses is 80, and his brother Aaron is 83. Now, you have to really look at this for what it is. I mean, because, my goodness. It is believed it's Pharaoh Ramses II. That was Pharaoh at the time. There's a lot of debate about this because of the timing, the year. It's a very difficult thing to narrow down exactly which Pharaoh it could have been. But I think it was Pharaoh Ramses II. So whether it was him or not, it really wouldn't have mattered. Okay? What does matter are all the events that surrounded this and the eventual Exodus itself. Nevertheless, you are Pharaoh. You are considered the god of this earth, and the living God, mind you. You're sitting on your throne in this great palace that's adorned with the finest silk. Marble is all over the place. You're dressed in the greatest finery imagined, royal blues, covered, in gold and silver and jewelry. And all of a sudden, Moses and Aaron shows up. As I said, Moses is 80, Pharaoh is 83. Aaron is 83. They both smell like sheep. They badly need a new tailor. And they walk up to you, the living God on the face of the earth, and say, we're going to take the entire workforce of Egypt and we're going to get out of here. Does anyone in their sane mind expect Pharaoh to say something like, okay, fine, take them all, yay!
No, I wouldn't expect so.
That is just not the best opening card anyone could have presented. At that point, there was approximately 2.5 million Jewish people who had been held as slaves in an occult polytheistic society for 430 years. Not 400, it's 430 years, people. Let's get the math right here. And they tell you, as I said, but we're just going to take everyone and get out of here. Well, okay, it doesn't work. So Moses throws down tells Aaron, throw down the staff, and it turns into a serpent, right?
Right.
And, of course, what's interesting is the magicians throw down their staffs. And they turn into serpents also, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we know that the staff of Aaron swallowed up those serpents. But the point here is that, did those magicians just duplicate a miracle of God?
Yeah, it's something I've often wondered about. How exactly did that happen?
Well, when Moses, we'll get into, if I have time, I'll try to backtrack on that. Because, as I said, there's a lot more going on here than people realize. But anyways, so now that's not one of the 10 plagues. That was just the opening card. You see, after that, you will find that there are 10 plagues. You see what I'm saying now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Let me think. So afterwards, they meet with God. God tells them, call the frogs out of the water. Well, they go next day, and tell basically Pharaoh, let my people go, and he won't. Now, mind you, at that time, Pharaoh was at the river. Now, anyone with any knowledge of Egyptian history, let alone Middle East history, will be able to tell you when they speak of the river, they're speaking of the Nile.
Right.
That is the river, folks. That's the big one, the one that sustains all life. And because Pharaoh, being Pharaoh, also the living embodiment of their god, Ra, he was down at the river, and as part of his duty as the god, he was blessing the water so that it would, bring forth, a bountiful harvest and everything. Well, Moses and Aaron show up, and they basically tell them the same thing. You're going to let God's people go, and, Pharaoh just ignore them. And Moses turns to Aaron, strike the river. And, funny thing is, I could see Aaron just jumping up in delight because this is a biggie.
Yeah.
This is a good miracle. He knows what's going to happen. But if you notice, Moses was not impressed, and neither was Pharaoh.
Right.
Nevertheless, Aaron goes down there, strikes the water, and it turns to one giant red corpuscle. But Pharaoh, as I said, wasn't impressed. He turned to his fellow magicians. They go to the waters. They turn it into blood also.
Mm-hmm.
That's recorded right there in the Bible. So, strike two for our side. And the next day, well, I should say a week later, after God released control over the Nile River and allowed it to turn back into water, Moses contends with Pharaoh again, and Pharaoh refuses to let the people go. And so Moses caused the frogs to come out of the river. Pharaoh's not impressed. He calls for his magician buddies, and they call the frogs out of the water. That is strike three per our side, isn't it?
Right.
The magicians, did they duplicate the miracles of God when they turned the rods into serpents, turned water into blood, and called the frogs out of the water also?
It would seem so.
Strike three for us. Again, something else was going on here. I'll try to backtrack if I have time. But my question to you, now, as you well know, this is going to get bad. This is just the opening stuff. Cattle, all the cattle of Egypt are going to be dying by anthrax, a form, what's known as a murrain, or what could be anthrax. Lice, locusts, the sun turning black, firstborn children of all the Egyptians dying. My question to you is, where are the children of Israel during all of this?
Yeah, that's something that's interesting too, because it would seem they were right in with all of it, but were they?
They weren't. They were tucked away in the land of Goshen.
Ah.
You see, Goshen is the northernmost point of that part of the African continent that you can possibly get to. You can't get any further than that than falling into the ocean. And, technically speaking, it wasn't part of Egypt, even though it connected, simply because, remember, Joseph, who served Pharaoh, was given the land for his family. You remember that?
Yeah.
It was given over to Joseph. Technically, it belonged to Joseph and his family, and you'll find out that will be eventually, I don't know how many of those 2.5 million Jewish people. But what's even more interesting is when God was about to break out the heavy guns, now remember, they're already in Goshen. They're as far outside of that part of Egypt as is humanly possible. God said, I will cause a division. I will separate this land from that land. And tomorrow you will see the evidence of what I've already done. And that's when God let loose the plague of lice. And the thing is, when you check the Bible word for word in this now, you will find out while the Egyptian cattle were being eaten alive to death by this plague of the fleas, the lice, and all those other nasty little flying, eating creatures, God, when he said he separated, he divided that land of Goshen, he wasn't kidding, because you look at what it was saying about the cattle of the Israelites, not one of them was even touched by a fly.
Wow.
Now, these are airborne creatures, so they could have flown right over and into the land of Goshen without a problem, but God divided it. He said, I've separated this, and nothing was going to cross God's border. They were completely cut off. They were separated by God himself. And as the rest of the plagues, one after another, all the way to the death of the firstborn of all Egyptians, nothing could cross and touch his children in the land of Goshen.
Wow. So if they were separated, what was the purpose of putting the blood on the doorpost so the last plague wouldn't affect them? Was that just for the benefit of?
Okay, that was in fulfillment of a prophecy that was going to come.
Okay.
You see, any door frame is made up of lintels, which are the side posts, and then, the post itself on the top.
Uh-huh.
Now, I want you to just look at this in your mind. When you take blood, you're going to and strike the left side and the right side of each lintel. In other words, the left side post and the right side post. Okay? They're covered in blood. Now, when you strike the top post with blood, doesn't the blood drip down to the ground?
Right.
You're forming a cross.
Wow.
In blood. You see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, definitely. But would that have applied to? Was that just for for Moses' people, or would that have applied, like if an Egyptian were to do that? If an Egyptian saw all these plagues and said, "Oh wow, this God, this is way more powerful."
No, it could not be for that reason, and this is why. And you're going to love this. Because if you notice, God physically removed them, right? Into the land of Goshen?
Right.
Okay. He kept them outside of his judgment when he divided it, didn't he?
Right.
So that's two of the three elements. But where is the righteousness in this? And this is going to answer your Egyptian question at the same time. You see, going by what the Bible tells us, it tells us that the Israelites had the seal of righteousness upon them.
Okay.
And the reason they had the seal of righteousness on them was because of Abraham. Abraham was the first of the Israelites to be circumcised, right?
Right.
And the explanation tells us that it was through Abraham's circumcision and everyone else's that the seal of righteousness passes to them. You see, circumcision was not just a physical sign of being Jewish, but it carried the spiritual connotation also of the seal of righteousness with it. Once you became circumcised, you also received the seal of righteousness.
Okay.
So once again, the three components that make up a rapture was met. God physically removed those who were declared to be righteous outside of his impending judgment.
Oh, okay.
Now, we could keep going on and on and on with other examples, but let's move this up to the next rapture. Did not God safely tuck away all his children in the land of Goshen before he lowered the boom?
Right.
Once again, notice all three criteria were met, and notice God tucked them away before, not during, not after, but before. Now, in this next rapture, we know, according to what the Bible tells us, classic example, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 16 through 18, that Christ is going to come and take his bride away, the church, us, into heaven. And that's the next rapture. Now, when we look at what's going to happen in the book of Revelation, this is critical to our understanding. First of all, what's an appointment? By definition, what is an appointment?
A time that's set before something's going to happen, for an event or a meeting or something like that.
Wow, that's one of the most incredibly boring explanations I've ever heard.
Come on.
I was actually hoping you were going to stop soon. I'm going, wow, this is supernaturally boring.
I love you too, Doc.
Why don't we just say for what it is? It's a time and a place to be somewhere for something.
There you go.
Simple. How about a doctor's appointment?
Oh, there you go.
There it is, Don't give me this, monosyllabic forever. It's not going to end diatribic explanation of an appointment.
See, this is why you're one of my favorite people to talk to.
Oh, my goodness. Wow, you reminded me of one of my old professors at university. I'm not going to say who he was, but he had a bald head, right?
Right.
And I always sat at the front of the class. I never wanted to miss a thing. And I wish I'd never sat in front of the class in this one class, because whenever this particular professor was doing some really deep thinking and trying to get to the understanding, he had a vein on his right side of his temple that would begin to pulse. I would sit there trying desperately not to run in fear. Just looking at it, looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. It's just pulsing. Oh my goodness! I mean, it just freaked me out. It really did. So a lot of times I was averting my eyes. Trust me. But anyways, an appointment, a time and place, and that's it. You're supposed to be at a certain time and place for something. In this case, it says a doctor's appointment, classic example. Well, the Bible tells us, you and I, let's just put that on the back burner for a second. Revelation, 7, 8, 9 times, I'd have to look at my notes because it's mentioned so many times in the book of Revelation that the whole of the wrath of God is being poured out.
Right.
It says the wrath of God. And a lot of people are trying to say, well, no, this is, the revelation is Satan pouring out his wrath on the earth because he's been thrown out of heaven in a second event. Horse manure. Horse manure. The Bible clearly says 7, 8, 9 times it's the wrath of God that's being poured out on the whole of the face of the earth.
Right.
Now, go back to the appointment. The Bible tells us you and I do not have an appointment. We do not have a time or a place ever to face the wrath of God.
Right.
It says that. We are not appointed to face the wrath of God. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that's clear-cut enough. And especially if you want to just go a little deeper into what's obvious, look at Revelation. 7, 8, 9 times it says the wrath of God is being poured out here.
Yeah.
And you don't have a time or a place to face the wrath of God. You're saved. So you're not judged. I mean, folks, let's just, put our little, common sense into this. You don't have a time and place to face the wrath of God. You're saved. So don't try to tell me you're going through the tribulation period. Some people, I tell you, they sound as if they're looking forward to it.
Right.
We're going to face, the tribulation period. That's okay. You do that. I've got a marriage supper to go to.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to do that? Have at it. But anyways, so when we apply the biblical definition of what makes a rapture, in this case, in the last example, God physically moved his people and kept them in the land of Goshen. This was a geological thing. Okay? You're going to stay there. You don't come back out of it. Okay? That's what he did. Now, in this next time, in this case, everyone's got to be removed again, but this time it's going to be off the earth. The reason it's off the earth is because the Bible says in Revelation 7 to 9 times that the whole of God's wrath is going to be poured out upon the whole of the earth. It didn't say part of it. It says the whole of the earth. And since we have righteousness, not because we are righteous, because it was imputed upon us through salvation by the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, because it's been imputed upon us, we have righteousness. So, knowing that, God cannot touch the place until righteousness has been removed, God's almost painted himself into a corner here. Because since his wrath is going to hit the whole of the earth, and since righteousness is still on the face of the earth, he's going to have to remove us before he lowers the boom, isn't he?
Right. That explains what the restrainer is, too, doesn't it?
The restrainer is the Holy Spirit who's keeping the wrath of God from hitting until we're removed.
Right.
And so, only, if you notice, only after we're removed does God lower the boom again. And again, this fits in with the biblical pattern. God physically removes those whom he declares to be righteous outside of his impending judgment. We won't be here for his impending judgment because if you notice, once again, ladies and gentlemen, the biblical pattern and just the examples we cited, and there's more that I do cite on the DVD, but the biblical example tells us God always removes his children before, not after, but before. And mind you, ladies and gentlemen, let me explain something here. This is not my opinion I'm giving you. This is God's. Yeah. Every single example will show you, beyond any shadow of a doubt, God took his children outside of his judgment first. He removed them before anything could happen. And he himself said, what stops him from doing any type of punishment is righteousness. Think about this. Can you cite for me, Joshua, just one example where God punished the righteous with the unrighteous?
No, not that I can think of.
I wouldn't want to worship God if he walked like that anyways. Why am I being punished? I didn't do it.
Exactly.
Now mind you, that was my declaration to my mother and father when I was a kid. Why am I being punished? I didn't do it. 9 out of 10 times I did do it.
Right.
And boy, did I get it. This is, people, compare God to your parents. If you deserve it, you're going to get it. If you don't, you don't get it. And in this next rapture, there's no other option. Again, God follows his own pattern. Even in his own words, he says, I am the Lord thy God, I change it not. He never changes. How could we depend on him if he suddenly changed his mind or his ways?
Yeah, exactly.
That's why he doesn't change. His own words declare it. And his own words tell us, and every single time there was a rapture, he removed his righteous people before the event. That's why in this next rapture, it's going to, excuse me, it's going to hold to the same biblical pattern. He will remove us, he will remove us before he lowers the boom, and then woe be to those upon the face of the earth afterwards.
So what do we do now? I have my own answer to this, but I'm curious what yours is. I have a feeling they're probably the same. What do we do with when people will say, well, and we get this from mid and pre-wrath and post and all these other. They say, well, God's wrath isn't really until after halfway through the tribulation, or it isn't until the trumpets or the vials, or all of these.
I address all that in this new DVD, but quickly with the wrath. Okay, the first time we hear the wrath of God is in Revelation chapter 6. That's 7 chapters before the middle of the tribulation period.
Right.
That's 4. So you see, the wrath of God is already being poured out during, the first half of the tribulation period. Those people who are trying to say, well, it's mid is when this happens. No, excuse me. You better start reading that Bible of yours a lot closer, because the wrath of God first begins in Revelation chapter 6, which is 7 chapters before where any theologian will tell you the mid of the tribulation period begins. Because we have to remember the tribulation is 7 years. And it's in the middle of it that the Antichrist, when he is crowned the king of the world, that he breaks the 7-year covenant he makes with Israel and betrays them. So there is definite ways to measure events in the Bible. And we find out that before he betrays also Israel, that the wrath of God is already being poured out on the face of the earth.
Right.
So this is not a mid thing. It's not. It clearly points out in the Bible where any theologian will tell you, this is 7 years, these events happened before chapter 13, these events happen after, and you can make an easy comparison. It's very easy. But there are going to be those people, and God forgive them for being so stiff-necked, that they think they know everything, that they're going to just hold to what they say no matter what truth they may be exposed to. Now, I've learned many, many, many great biblical things because I was willing to sit down and listen, and if I, realize, oh, wait a second, I made a mistake here. I changed my degree 180 degrees around.
Oh, yeah.
Because I saw the truth of what God was trying to teach me. I don't know the whole of the sum of the Word of God, but I do know when, as God is trying to teach me something that, if God's trying to teach me this, and if it contradicts something else, I must be wrong about something here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've always been a student. I will die a student, because a true student is always learning, and he's not afraid to admit when he's wrong.
I couldn't agree more. Same here.
And I'm not going to get heated or upset or, condemn people. No. That's not even Christian. So, those people who want to be like that, please don't bother me. You want to have that type of Christianity, stay in your own camp. I don't want to be bothered with you. I'll be quite honest with you. Right. I don't want to be bothered, because I've got too many brothers and sisters who really want to learn truth.
Yeah.
And mind you, I listen to absolutely every word my brothers and sisters are telling me when they come up with something, because guess what? Maybe they know something God wants me to know.
Yeah.
I don't know the whole of the sum of anything. But what I do know is that there was a biblical pattern that deals with what is known as a rapture, not the rapture. It's not the rapture, folks. It's what is a rapture. And we know by examples throughout the Bible that there is a pattern. God never changes, neither does the pattern, because God never changes. He never changes his mind. He never changes his ways. This is how he does things. Now, interesting enough, in this new DVD, which is called Which Rapture Are We Waiting For? People have tried to tell me that the pre-tribulation rapture is a new concept, and that it came about only in 1830 when a young girl of Scottish-Irish descent named Margaret MacDonald had a vision. And they say, well, this is the vision she had, and it's pre-trib. Well, first of all, those people either don't know what they're talking about or they're lying.
Right.
There's no other way about this. They either are completely ignorant about what they're trying to push, or they're lying to me.
I'm really glad.
Margaret MacDonald, and I included the whole of her visions. See, they omit certain parts. But the thing is, see, I do know the story, I know the visions. And so the whole of it is put in. And when you look at the whole of her visions, you'll find out Margaret MacDonald was post-tribulation.
Oh, wow.
It is so clear and obvious it was post. Even Helen Keller could have saw that one.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you're bringing up this point too, because it's something that it's one of the main arguments used against the pre-tribulation.
Yeah, and then they try to say 30 years later, or it was 31 years later, John Nelson Darby picked it up and ran with it. Well, that's not true. There was no pre-tribulation there because her vision was post. And so what I did, among other things, to prove the point that pre-trib is not the new kid on the block, but the only one that existed up to that point, I went and I created a reverse timeline. I started from around 1900. I think I purposely used Scofield's reference Bible because people like to say, well, that's the first time it's mentioned. Really? So we started with Scofield's reference Bible. And when I say dozens, Joshua, I'm not kidding. I use dozens of examples and to create this reverse timeline. We go back to the 19th, 18th, 17th, 16th, 15th, 14th century, all the way back to the days of the apostles themselves and to the disciples of the apostles, and you will find out that in the ancient literature, and as I said, I've cited dozens of examples. I'll show you the work itself. There was only one perspective ever written in the past almost 2,000 years of our ancient Christian brothers and sisters. They all wrote pre-trib.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another really important point, too, because another argument that it's just false, we'll call it what it is, it's just a false argument, is
it's
that...
It's a lie!
Yeah.
I'll call it for what it is. It's a bold-faced lie that Satan came up with to cause division among the church.
Yeah, and people will say, well, the ancient church fathers never talked about a pre-trib rapture,
Again,
but yeah, they did.
Bold-faced lie. I can prove it. As I said, I created a reverse timeline. I will show you the actual work itself. I know. I've read them. I know what the works say.
Yeah.
And every single time, it was pre-trib. Now, I have challenged. Now, remember, I've used dozens of examples here to create this reverse timeline that goes all the way back to the apostles themselves. I've challenged mid- and post-tribulation people to come up and perform the same thing. I want to see you create a reverse timeline all the way back to the apostles where the ancient literature said mid- or post-tribulation.
Right.
Not one of them has ever been able to do it, and they'll never be able to because such a thing doesn't exist. It was always pre-tribulation. I have got some of the most noted Christian writers and theologians throughout Christian history. We've got the writings of Polycarp. Excuse me, still trying to get over a small cold here. We've got writers, as it says, that goes from the days of Schofield all the way back to the apostles. It's almost 2,000 years long. This historical Christian timeline that will prove, and as I said, this is the writings themselves, everyone. It's in their own writings where they spoke of nothing but the pre-tribulation rapture.
Absolutely.
How do I argue with that kind of evidence? This is what my own brothers and sisters were saying. This is what they were teaching. This is what Christ passed to the apostles. The apostles passed to their disciples, and their disciples passed it on to their students, to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, all the way up to the 19th century and beyond.
Wow.
The evidence is overwhelming. And for those people who will try to deny it, they're lying, and they're lying to themselves, because they want to be right no matter what. You know, I don't want to be right for all the wrong reasons.
Right.
I want to be right because this is what God had to say about it. And as I said, we saw in the Bible, and you can see it for yourself, ladies and gentlemen, on that brand new DVD. It's called Which Rapture Are We Waiting For? You can see for yourself how this biblical pattern of God was established before you and I were even a thought. And what kills me is that there are those people who say that, you know, the word rapture, again, wasn't a word that appeared until Margaret MacDonald, well, until John Nelson Darby, 31 years later, came up with it. You know what? That's another lie. That is another lie. What I did, again, okay, let's search out the origin of the word rapture. And because what kills me is people say, well, the word rapture never appears in the Bible. Well, actually, they're wrong. Go to the 328 8D translation of the Latin translation of the Bible. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, the word raptio is used. Raptio is the word we use for rapture.
Oh,
it's
wow.
right in there. It's in the Latin. It's in the Bible itself. Yeah.
Wow.
See, it's written in Latin, and Latin became the scholarly language. You know, it ended up like that, you know, because obviously of the Roman occupation of, you know, Israel, the surrounding areas, you know that. And so, because Rome eventually, you know, fell, that the language, you know, no longer became the mainstay language, you know, another took over, you know, you had the Greek, the Hebrew. Latin survived, it still survives today, but people aren't using Latin like they used to. We're using what's known as, you know, the American English. But the word rapio was used for the Greek word harpazo. Harpazo is a word that's used for rapture in the Greek language. In the Latin word, it is in the Latin translation of the Bible. It's rapio, ladies and gentlemen. Rapio is a word for rapture in the English language. And again, I trace this all the way back. And I used, again, I don't know, must have been, again, dozens of examples using the literature to prove how the word had been used as the centuries went by.
Wow.
So it's not a new word. It wasn't started by John Nelson Darby. Doesn't come from him. It comes all the way from the 3rd century itself. And it was a common word that was used within the Christian community.
Huh. Wow.
Yep.
That's really interesting, because that is another common argument that is attempted, to be used against the pre-trib, but it really doesn't hold up when you really look at it. I know we're kind of running a little low on time here, but if people want to find your DVD or find out more about you, where can they go to do that?
Well, if they want to check out the DVD, look at the others, all they have to do is go to my website at www. And the rest of this is all lowercase, no apostrophes. Just type in, it's a God Thing Productions 777.com. Now that's, it's a God Thing Productions 777.com, and you'll see it as soon as the front page loads. And there's a taskbar on the left-hand side. At the top of it, you'll find where other DVDs in my series are listed. Plus, you can find me on Facebook. Just look under Doc Marquis or Joseph Marquis. Facebook made a mistake with the name, so I've got a Joseph Marquis site also. With the Doc Marquis site, just put in Doc Marquis 777. If you want contact me via email, just put in Doc Marquis 777 at yahoo.com. Or if you want to contact me directly, just use this phone number, 402-228-9476. Now that's 402-228-9476.
Awesome. I got to say, I really appreciate that you are so accessible and that you actually do put your phone number out there for people to get a hold of you. That's rare, and it's good to see that.
Well, Joshua, I know people have questions.
Yeah.
And they're looking for answers. So, if they have a question for me, there it is. Just call me.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Speaking of people having questions, a few people did send in some questions they wanted me to ask. Do you have time?
Yeah, I've got time for that. Ben, as you all know, I've got to fly. But no, let's hear what the people want to ask.
Sure. Okay, the first one I think we already kind of touched on, but I'll ask it anyway. I'm just going to use first names here. Audrey asks, isn't the tribulation about Satan's wrath as opposed to God's wrath?
No. As we already pointed out, 7 to 9 times it's mentioned in the book of Revelation, and mind you, outside of the book of Revelation, there's other examples. Where it says, this is the wrath of God that's being poured out upon the whole of the face of the earth. It's God's wrath. I mean, who cares if Satan wants to throw a temper tantrum? It doesn't matter.
Right.
He doesn't have that type of power, to do anything to the earth like God can, because it was God who called all the atoms together to begin with. This is God's wrath. This is God's preliminary judgment upon a very sick and sinful world.
Absolutely. All right, good deal. The rest of these aren't necessarily about the rapture, but they're about they're questions people had for you. Donna wrote in and wrote, please could you ask him if he would explain the meaning of the number 33, or some people who use threes many times in a conversation.
Okay. A lot of people, to begin with, will associate the number 33 very quickly because of the Masons. Okay, because of the 33rd degrees. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But you see, it's not associated like that in the way they're thinking of. You see, in gematria, the number 33 is the number for promise, something that is going to happen, something that's been promised, something that's going to be kept. In other words, something that's yet to happen. Not a prophecy, but something someone else promised.
Okay.
Right.
All right, good deal. The next three are from the same person, Cody, which actually is my little brother. So.
Okay. Nepotism lives on.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. I have no problem admitting to that. I'm saving the best for last. He's a great guy. He's just kind of starting out in this stuff and learning, and he loves the materials that you've put out, and he's learned a lot.
God bless him.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got the biggest heart of anyone I know. The first two kind of go hand in hand. Well, actually, really, all three of them are kind of go hand in hand. But how did you leave the Illuminati, and how did you manage to survive leaving? Have they made any attempts on your?
Can you tell him just to listen to DVD 1 and has my entire testimony in it? It's a long explanation because it took 3 years, 3 very long years for me to get saved. You see, the long and short of it was I was stationed at, let me think, that was Fort Lewis, Washington. That would have been the summer of '76. And I was going down, just walking down the road to the PX because I need to get some supplies. Well, I ran into a colleague of mine in the medical field, and he was just a colleague, more of an associate, no one I really knew, but recognized. And so, anyways, after talking to him for about 5-10 minutes, he had to go somewhere. But right before he left, he asked me what I thought was the silliest question on God's earth at the time. He wanted to know if I wanted to go to church with him on Sunday. Now, could you see me, a Luciferian witch, summoning up demons, on every single Sabbath you can think of, setting foot inside of a Christian church? I mean, seriously, the Raptures really would have fallen on me at that point. But
right.
From that moment on, it started a domino effect. And for the next 3 years, no matter where I went, and I mean no matter how far I went, there were some born-again Christians just waiting in the rafters to witness to me.
Right.
And as I said, the long and short of it, but the whole of the testimony, it is in my first DVD. That's called The Rival of the Antichrist. The end of those 3 years, I finally saw what I was doing in light of what the Christians had been telling me all along. So it was on April 15th, 1979, and I admit it, I was a sold-out slave of Satan, but on that same day, I left that church as a born-again child of the King. And for the almost 36 years now, I've been fighting against the Illuminati, revealing their plans for the New World Order, doing everything I can to warn everyone for over 36 years of what's going to happen. And sadly enough, it's happening right before our eyes. But that's really the long and short of what had happened.
Wow. Do you still have contacts with current or former members of the Illuminati?
How do you think I get people out of it?
Right.
I mean, you have to have a certain amount of exposure.
Yeah.
And you see, I finished that DVD series, the one we've been referencing. That one's called Secrets of the Illuminati. I've just started a brand new series. It's called The Occult Takeover of the World. The first half of those DVDs, and I'm going to be using a DVD on every single one of the major occult groups in America, witchcrafts, Satanism, Buddha, Santeria, Polymeria, so on and so forth. I'm devoting a DVD, I say a DVD. They're going to have probably 2 DVDs in each of them And we're going to, let's just say, let's start with the first one. It's on witchcraft, okay? And every single one of these DVDs are going to be broken into 4 major sections. The first section will deal with the historical belief of whatever it is. In this case, what is the history to witchcraft, the actual history? Not, all the mumbo-jumbo, if you'll excuse the occult pun there, that people will use to explain these things. No. What are the hardcore facts here? The second section, we're going to get into the actual core belief. What do they really believe in? What are they practicing? How are they doing what? This is not to say I'm going to teach people how to practice. No. I'm going to take you into the belief system and such.
Right.
The third section is, gee, does the Bible have anything to say about this? Well, duh. But people don't want to look at that. Of the 31,178 verses found in the KJV 1611 translation, there are a little bit more than 3,100 verses. Now, that's more than 10% of the Bible.
Wow.
God didn't just take up 10% of his own word just for the sake of taking up space.
Right.
No, he gave us all that information about the occult, the enemy, their belief system, how they practice, what they're practicing, everything, for a reason. But people aren't listening. Nevertheless, we go back into the Bible, and I'm going to show you exactly what God is saying about, in this case, let's say witchcraft, and then, in the next DVD, it'll be, on Satanism and so on and so forth. Then the last section, the fourth one, I'm going to teach everyone how to effectively witness to every single person in every single one of those groups.
Oh, great. That's awesome.
You cannot use the Roman road for these people. You can try it, but most people, I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to fail because
Right.
you don't understand what they believe in. You've got to treat each of them separately and with a different method. For goodness sakes, we don't witness to Mormons the same way we witness to Jehovah's Witnesses, do we?
No.
No. It's the same thing with the occult world because there's 7, 8 major different branches there, and they all have differences. You can witness to a witch, you can witness to a Satanist about Satan, but you can't witness to a witch about Satan because they don't believe in Satan to begin with.
Right.
So what are you going to do at that point? And you see, people don't know what to do. And so that's what we're going to address. I'm going to teach them how to do this right.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. It sounds like it'll be a really powerful witnessing tool.
Well, Lord willing, it will. But after that, it's in the same series. We're going to have other DVDs on the vampire movement, the werewolf movement, the zombie movement, the hidden horrors of Harry Potter, Christian witchcraft, and I'm going to also add, another DVD on the deliverance ministry.
Oh, great.
This is what I've been running or trying to run under the grace of God here for almost 36 years, trying to teach people spiritual warfare. How do we do these things? And it amazes me how out of hand and how misinformed all this has become. Because, again, people don't want God's opinion. They want their own opinions. Well, guess what? I could care less about your opinion, because if God wanted your opinion, he would have wrote a book on it. He would have wrote, instead of the book of John or the book of this, he would have put in your name and put the book of so-and-so.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I don't see that, so no offense. Unless you're lining up with the Bible, I don't want to hear it.
Amen.
And you know what? Quite honestly, I thought when I was getting older, I really thought that as I got older, I would mellow out. Joshua, I got ornery. I really did. I am fast running out of patience with my brothers and sisters who just want to run around like a bunch of spoiled children, whining about this and that. And you know what? Oh, my goodness. I would be lousy at being God because I would have already given them a cosmic smackdown.
Well, I can't blame you there.
Oh, my word. But no, the truth of the matter is, guess what? God didn't want your opinion, so it's about time you stop listening to His.
Right.
But so there it is.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you, coming on the show and talking to us about this and answering people's questions. And I think this turned out really good. And it's always such a pleasure talking to you.
I have a ball on this show, Joshua. You know that.
Oh, I wanted to ask too. Is that blog post still up that you wrote a while ago about the Rapture?
Yes, it's on the website. Just look under the religious. No, it's under the. It should be in the. Hold on. I can do this very quickly. God be praised, because right before the show, I was attempting to answer all the emails I got today. You just can't imagine. I mean, I get a little bit more than 300 emails every day.
Wow.
In the morning. I average about 300 plus, and by the time I finish my work in the evening, I've got about another 100 I have to answer. Yeah, it's never ending. Yeah, look under the Illuminati card game section.
Okay.
And wait a second, let me see if it's the one I'm thinking of. Wait a second.
Well, I can even just post the link in the show notes too, so people will have access to it.
Funny, see, we got quite a number of links, articles and other things on the website, and I can't remember where it is.
Well, that's okay.
This is terrible. The article should be called Rapture. And I didn't mean for it to be as long as it was. It came out to be quite long.
Yeah. It took me quite a while to read through, but I'm glad that it is that long. It's packed full of information, and it really does answer a lot of the arguments against the pre-trib, and it's brilliantly written. I mean, I sat down and read the whole thing, and then immediately posted it to my Facebook page when I first saw it.
Well, then you might want to tell people to read it on your Facebook page, because I
can't find it. That's no problem. Yeah, I'll.
This is a terrible thing.
That's no problem. I'll get the link, and I'll have the link to that blog in the show notes. So if people are listening right now, just look at the show notes. The link will be there, and definitely read it. It's good reading. Even if you don't subscribe to the pre-trib view, you'll learn a lot from that blog, and definitely get the DVD.
Yeah, but again, I wrote that article. Oh, that was about 2 years ago, I think it was, because, again, so many people had been asking me about it, and, and mind you, it's in the section called "It's in the Bible."
Okay.
It is, and the article is called "The Rapture."
Fantastic.
Yeah, just go to the on the left-hand side of the. You'll see the taskbar. You'll see the section about not even halfway down. It's called "In the Bible." Open it up, and there's the article called "The Rapture." And I really didn't mean for it to be that long. I think it came out to be 24 pages.
Wow. Well, I can relate. I've had a few blog posts that have turned out like that too.
Well, especially when, let's face it, we have to, most people don't know that, for instance, that there's 17 examples, 17 verses, I should say, no, 13 verses, where there's 17 examples of the word hapezo, which is the word for rapture, or, well, not for rapture, but to carry up, to take away by force, to pull, caught away, all that, you know. That's where, you know, the Latin word is derived from, for rapture. You know, and I want everyone to know, excuse me, this is exactly the right verse. This is where it is in the Bible. Look it up for yourselves. I do all the homework for them. All they have to do is just, you know, do some comparisons, you know, open up that black thing that has a lot of dust on it. That's called the Bible, folks. And look up these verses. You'll see none of this is being made up. And a whole lot of other things in this. You know?
Yeah.
My gift was teaching. This is what God has me to do. You know, and so since it's, you know, God, you know, folks, I'm going to do the best I can because I expect nothing less than the best being done for God. Hence, that's why, you know, I had someone just the other day, I can't remember who it was, but they were telling me that the DVDs, they said they're professionally packaged, the covers are fantastic, they love the way the presentations are being done, how the films are being shot and all this. Well, I demand this of me, my director, and anyone else involved because I demand the best for God, because that's what God deserves.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm not saying I'm perfect or, you know, look at us folks, no. What I'm saying is, as a born-again Christian, you know, my obligation is to do the best that I can for God, and that's what I intend to do in anything that I do, be it the DVD or if I'm writing an article, because now I'm a contributing editor for News with Views. They asked me to become one, and, you know, whatever else, I'm going to do the best I can.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's we should all be doing that. Yeah, I wanted to ask too, because this is important. Is there a way, if people want to help donate or support your ministry, is there a way that they can do that?
Well, yes, God bless you for asking. You see, on the same website, we were just talking about the taskbar on the left-hand side. You go up to the very top of the taskbar, you'll see a yellow oblong box. It says make a donation. You can just do it right through there.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, that's simple and easy, and that's the way we like it. And well, again, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. This has been a blast, and I hope I haven't taken up too much of your time.
Oh, it's always my pleasure, Joshua.
Well, we'll definitely have to have you back on. It's always good. It's always edifying, and you know, I've definitely learned a lot from you and your ministry. So, of course, all the glory goes to God, but I still thank you for that. And yeah, we'll have to do this again.
Always.
All right. Well, again, that was Doc Marquis talking about the Rapture, and again, I highly suggest you check out his DVD. At least read the blog. The blog's free, so you don't get a better deal than that. I'll have the link to the blog in the show notes, and you know, as we talked about, it is long, but it's definitely worth it. It's just packed full of information. It's very well written. So check that out. Get the DVD. If for nothing else, to just, even if you're not a pre-trib Rapture believer, just to learn about the other side. You know, as Doc said in the show, it's important to be open to, you know, other possibilities because, well, we might not know everything. In fact, we definitely don't know everything, so that's important. If you're interested in checking out any other episodes of The Sharpening, you can find all episodes on my website, ministryministry.com, or you can go straight to youtube.com/Josh Peck Disclosure for all past episodes. And subscribe to us on YouTube. We're coming out with new episodes all the time, so we're going to keep this going. And since I brought up donations before, I may as well bring it up for my ministry as well. If you would care to donate to help the show and to help Mini Study Ministry, You can do so right at Mini Study Ministry. There's a link up there that says donate. We're not 501c3 or anything like that, so it's not tax deductible. It would just be a free gift. And like I've said so many times on this show, I'm never going to be the kind of person that'll promise you blessings or say that you're going to get your gift back tenfold or anything. I'm not in the business of making promises for God. And actually, if you're not absolutely sure that God is directing you to donate, then don't do it. Only donate if you know God's directing you to do so. And if you don't feel led to donate but still want to help, pray for us. I mean, a lot of times that's more effective anyway. We can always use more prayer to keep this ministry going and to keep the show going. All right, so all that being said, thank you for listening. This has been The Sharpening, and I am your host, Josh Peck. As always, take care, and God bless.